The call to address the issues surrounding farmer-herder clashes in the country is still at the forefront. Now, some political leaders and some activists urge the president to proffer a solution to this menace, which they say might result to a civil war. Some have said herders have the right to protect themselves with guns. All right, to help us narrow down this issue and how national security is tending towards identity politics, because you would have seen right now that it would seem like some people have already profiled certain individuals as the ones responsible for one thing or the other. How all of that plays out, we have this morning a security engineer in the person of Seun Mabogunje. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Mabogunje. We also have joining us from our Abuja studio, the National Consultative Forum National Chairman of National Conscience Party, Dr. Yunusa Tanko. He joins us in our studios in Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me begin with you, Mr. Mabogunje. How significant, in your opinion, is the place that we are consciously or unconsciously giving to identity politics in the scheme of things?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think that you cannot deny the fact that Nigeria as a country is made up of about 300 different tribes or ethnic groups, with their language, their culture, their history, which is unique to them and therefore cannot be wished away. We have been brought together as a country by the colonial masters, but our identity as Yoruba, Hausa, Fulani, Igbo, Kanuri, or whatever remains our identity. And we need to always be ready to have an honest discussion about this so that when we come together, we recognize who we are and we respect and appreciate each other's preference. And that's what I call the issue of, national, because we have two major issues, that of development and that of nationalities. And if the nationalities do not feel comfortable in the space, then there will always be tension. And so it's not something you can wish away. It's something that has to be discussed and discussed continuously. So the identity problem still lies with us 60 years after independence.
Well, clearly, from what you're saying right now, it would seem like even before the conversation about coming together as a nation, it was never, it perhaps wasn't seen as an issue. But let me ask Dr. Yunusa Tanko the same question. In your opinion, how significant is the conversations going on in Nigeria, especially in our politics, is the identity question?
Thank you very much and good morning, Nigerians. I want to differ a little. Yes, that we are diverse in our tribe and tongues and all. But at a point in time, people can be brought together one way or the other. There are other countries who have a larger population and a larger different ethnic groups, and yet they are living together without any problem. I think our problem is our leadership. At a point in time, remember very well, these Fulani herdsmen or herders or other tribes that we have problems and issues with as of today were people we found favor in at a time. In fact, to say the least, you always want to look at the Northerners as the most dedicated people who can be your megad. They were securing life and properties at a point in time. Virtually almost every household, north, west, and south, the person that you find as a megad is a Northerner. So we were trusting our lives with them at a point in time. Where did we lose it? Where did we have the problem of discord as regard to trust? Now it has turned other way around. I will look at these issues in three perspectives. One, the root cause. Secondly, the threat that it has already portends. Then thirdly, what are the solutions? When you look at the root cause, number one, for a very long time, even in the northern part, we've been having people coming in from Niger, Chad, and all of them. And some of them have already acclimatized in the northern part of this country. And we have never had issues with them. But unfortunately, later on when politics started coming in, here I would like to mention, at a point in time, almost every governor, he or she in politics, had a trained militian under him or her in order to gain power in terms of politics. That was one. So then secondly, majority of our companies in the north, talk about the industrial area in Kakuri, Kaduna, talk about those ones in Kano, talk about the ones in Gombe and all. Virtually almost all of them are down. Then there were issue of cattle rustling, and people were listening to it at happening. The Fulanis who were mostly cattle rearers, their cattle are being rustled by some criminal individuals. We did not do anything about it. When you look at those industries, all of them are down. Where do you expect this overgrowing population to find succor or employment? None of our governors, especially in the north, I would say, have sat down and tried to look at what really happened to our economic hub in the north in terms of taking care of our population. Nothing was done about it. And then it becomes a very big problem. If you accord any criminal tendency individual, they will tell you that, yes, they have nothing to do, there's no work and all. And that has, one way or the other, affected even in the people in the south, where majority of graduates have been just moving around the street with no job to do. And no, most of our governors have not done anything about it now to dovetail into the federal government activities. You come up with this scientific idea of e-money, that money and all. It does not resonate directly with the Nigerian population. And we need to find a way around it. Now, what is the threat? The threat here is this. It has been established that those who are interested in insurrection and secession capitalize on this particular issue. Today, what we are seeing is that those group of allies that we have probably in the south with the west and all is breaking. Anybody now can pick up his own phone and then develop a video and call a particular part of the country criminals or particular this part of the country fraudsters or any, and then he shoot it into the air and then it goes viral. And then it develop a hatred within one sect and all. Then we start profiling individuals that this man is a Yoruba man and this man is a Hausa man or this person is an Igbo man. That has to stop. The threat is now that those who are interested in breaking up this country find favor in this particular cracked world. And then they are using this as an opportunity to create a very big problem. Unfortunately, we have a leadership in the past and the present who have not been able to take care of these issues as they emanate. Because when you allow things to fester for a very long time, they degenerate into a lot of situations.
Well, Dr. Tanko, Dr. Tanko, we'll come to those solutions, but this issue of identity politics, just as you have said, it's clear. It clearly dates back many, many years. And if you also listen to what Mr. Mabuk just said, he referenced the fact that it's even pre-colonial. I mean, to beg your pardon, pre-independence. So if those things weren't factored into our politics from the very beginning, is that an issue? That and a number of other things we'll look at when we return from this break. So please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Chief Godi Wazirike also joins in the conversation now. He is a lawyer, former president of Igbo think tank group Kaikenga, and also a delegate at the one of the previous national conferences. Thanks for joining us this morning, Chief Wazirike. So we're talking about, I want to believe that you've been following the conversation, but let me ask you by way of introduction, how much of a threat or a unifying force do you see the issue of identity politics in our quest towards nationhood?
Well, one thing you have to accept is that one is an Igbo man first, a Yoruba man first, a Hausa man first before becoming a Nigerian. I agree. But that is also a major obstacle. In other words, you identify me by name or by tribe, and thereafter you assume that I must be in this kind of situation. Let me just give you an example of what is happening today. When you are choosing the army chiefs, you always look in one direction. Then there is a particular group you will not choose. And they say, this is only the person I can trust. That's identity politics, which actually is not true. The crisis of identity politics has gone too far in this country. You are a good man, all because you are from here. You are a bad man because you are from here. It makes no sense. In this country, if we must face reality, we must move from identity politics to ability politics. In other words, if you are good in what you are doing, why not allow you to do it? So for even the smallest organization, when they want to employ, what do? They say, well, I know Tunde, I know Emeka, I know Shehu, I know them. It is not the ability that you know, it is rather where they come from that is actually pushing you.
Chief, if I can ask you, so that we can, expand the conversation, or we have a few other people on the panel. I remember Nigeria's first national anthem. One of the lines there says, "Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand." Do you think that the issue of identity was negotiated before we were unified into a nation?
No. There was nothing like negotiation for how we are to be ruled as a people. Rather, 1914 amalgamation was based on economic reasons. They didn't even care at all whether they can live together or not. As the anthem, which you just recited, was going on, people did not care too much as at 1960 where you came from. Let me just give you a good example. University of Ibadan originally started as a university college, and the white people were there. When it became a university and a black man had to be appointed, where did he come from? Anambra. Professor Kennedy, nobody bothered because the man merited it. They were working on merit. But when he moved to the University of Lagos, another man on merit was there. Suddenly, identity politics, where he come from, that thing started rearing its head. And it has not stopped. When Obasanjo was president, he did something which has not been done. He brought Professor Shehu from the north and made him vice chancellor of the University of Nigeria. He didn't care because Obasanjo has this swashbuckling way of doing things. Very few people understood what he was trying to do, which is abolish that discrimination based on where you come from. But what do we have today? A permanent secretary, a minister is in office. He sees somebody who's not from his area. He says, "Oh, you mean this man is working in my office? Transfer him." If President Muhammadu Buhari really wants to do something positive for which we are going to remember him for, one, any minister who has all the PAs from his area must change that policy or he will be changed. Two, any permanent secretary who discriminates. For instance, if you go to the office of vice president, at a point it was more like everybody was Yoruba except one, Mrs. Waes. But now he has started changing. You go to Asarok, speaking Hausa may not be enough. You must also learn for full day. So it is no longer a case of efficiency. It is more a case of where do you come from? And that is not good because it elevates mediocrity to a level beyond which this country is suffering now.
All right, then. Thank you, Chief. But Mr. Mabukunje, perhaps the attempts of the federal government to identify or unify the nation by recognizing the different identities and balancing things, or balancing politics, if you will, was the reason for the Federal Character Commission. Post-Civil War, you'd remember that the NYSC program came up by way of an attempt to let the young generation at the time go to the different parts of Nigeria so that we can delineate all of this identity and retain that Nigerianness that the nation was supposed to come up with. Do you think those policies at the time, the Federal Character Commission, the NYSC program, and a few other things, do you think it was significant, Mr. Mabukunje, in trying to unify or play down the identity politics or identify the place of identity politics while we build a nation?
Yes, thank you. I think there have been attempts to reduce the importance, the identity politics in our politics. I think there's been an attempt. But, you know, in everything we do, we reinforce it. For example, every form you fill, you must fill your state of origin. The federal character itself is an identity crisis because you are, like the chief said, you are not judged based on your character or your competence. You are judged on where you come from. And that in itself is identity politics. And it is very strong here. And it has not been discussed. And you know, they're like fault lines. If you notice, when the economy is good, there is less tension with regards to where you come from. It's when things begin to break down that everybody goes to his tent and the issue of identity becomes a major issue, just like what we have now. So the issue has not been dealt with, in my honest opinion. It's been, you know, people play with it, but in the leadership comes and they come up with different attitude to it. For example, right now, the federal character is more in breach than in practice. Because like the chief said, you have a situation where almost all the service chiefs come from a particular region. Even if you think about it strategically, how do you want the other regions that are not represented in that council, when the National Security Council meet, how do you want them to feel that, are they being protected? Do they have a voice in the decisions being made at that level of national security? It's just because perception is reality. If I don't feel my interest is being looked after, then I'm not going to trust the system. And most of us trust the system because we feel somebody we can relate with is in office, is in that critical discussion. But we have a situation now where in many areas, like particularly security, there is hardly any representation of any other region other than one region. And that to me is very dangerous. It has caused a lot of conspiracy theories to flourish, and it's not helping the security effort of government. So we cannot get rid of this identity until we have an honest discussion and recognize and respect that those identities are here to stay. You're not going to get a Yoruba man or an Igbo man not identify with where he comes from, or Hausa man or Fulani man. There's nothing wrong with it. We have to embrace it and put in place a structure that allows us to thrive together I believe Nigeria can work as one united country, but we cannot say that there's no identity politics, and we must recognize it and make sure it's made to work for us, not work against us.
But it was never an issue, you know. For many years, it wasn't an issue. Let me take this to Dr. Tanko. This wasn't really an issue. I remember something that Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State said in the course of the week. He said that there are Yoruba people, I think, in the Bauchi or Gombe, who have been there for more than 100 years, and they even rose, according to him, to the position of permanent secretaries in the civil service in those states. So those things weren't particularly an issue. You have also referenced the fact that very many different Nigerians live in areas where they do not have, origin. The governor of Oyo State also said, at a public forum, that the Seriki in Ibarakwa or Okiogun area of his state has been there for a minimum of 40 years. Chasing him out of Oyo State is not, something to be considered. And of course, we can go about, you know very well that there are so many Igbo people in northern Nigeria doing business very well established. To ask them to leave, I don't know what's going to happen to their politics and to their economy and the economy of the environment where they live. There has been intermarriages, we live together, we work together, we play together. So what then, after so many years, is responsible for playing up these identity sentiments that are working against our security apparatus?
Greed and lack of patriotism and self-interest is part of the reason. And I give you a little story. I remember our father, Madam Tonkoyaka saying, was saying at a forum that at a point in time when we are trying to get the North to be westernized in education, using Western education to kind of help to meet up the gap within the South and the North. What they did at that time is this. They brought in Igbos who are well-entrenched educationally and Yorubas who are well-entrenched in Western education, and they brought them up to the North because we couldn't just try to get more people coming from abroad to teach our younger ones. So they were the teachers. They were the one training the teachers, our own local teachers, to teach the other ones in future. So they were like training the trainers' trainees. Then at the same time, too, they became head of departments and all. And I know very well, even when I was in school in Kaduna Polytechnic, I have an HOD, Mr. Ogbonna, who was from Imo State or Anambra. We were very, very close with the families and everybody. We have lecturers from the Yoruba tribe who were teaching also. Everybody in the North, you have, even up to today, you still have very much some of the lecturers who are from the South who are in the universities in the North. Except that now, gradually, some of our people too are now trying to catch up, and then you have very many of them in. So the greed in terms of politics led to this particular situation because you want to have an identity and say that, look, these are my people. So I want to be, I need to be allowed to work with my own people. I wonder what tells you that the other people who have helped in working with you before are not your people. So this particular issue must be looked into very well. You mentioned a fundamental fact. Here I am. I was closely related with the Igbo people, and in fact, to a point in time, they were trying to say, yes, I was adopted as an Igbo son because of my closeness with them and all. But also, you will also want to realize that very many of our Northerners, like Atine and the rest of them who became a councillor in Enugu and the rest of them, at that time, there was no difference. We did not have any difference of interest. But the politics of today has really turned towards another different dimension. And I keep on mentioning it. Those who were able to empower some hoodlums and militias with guns and all should go back and retrieve them, because that is the beginning, one of the beginning of the problem. They've armed them in such a way that they believe that if it's not them, then it must not be another person. So we need to checkmate this particular trend, which is already happening and is giving a potential a big danger to the Nigerian people. And mark you, do not forget that it is not only in Nigeria as it's a big space as Nigeria. It also happens in the states, within the local government and what local government. So they too have this particular issue. So if you think that probably you are solving the problem nationwide, nationally, there are those that happen locally which are even more dangerous. And so we need to find a way for people to start believing that together as a people, we are one, whether you like it or not. Even if you say you want to divide the country into pieces, one way or the other, you will need one person from another part of the country to come and help you do one thing or the other. Okay. Because all of us are gifted in different ways, and so we need each other. For me, it's about going back to the drawing board. Detoxify yourself from being haters. Detoxify yourself from segregation. Detoxify yourself from being greedy. There's enough for everybody to benefit from and take to look after his future for today and tomorrow.
Well, you've raised a very, very valid point there. But before I take on the issues that you have raised, it's interesting that you almost had an Igbo name. I'm wondering what that name would have been. I wonder why you're not... Where's your red cap, by the way? Let me take this to Chief Wazurike. I don't know what name you would want to give Dr. Tanko Yakasai. You know, what Igbo name you would want to give him.
One number.
Okay. But the question that I want to ask you, Chief, is this. You sat with many other people at that national conference at some point. Did this issue come up? Now, I ask this against the background of the fact that part of the reason for many ethnic identities wanting to seek relevance has been partly responsible for breaking the nation into several states. We started as 3 regions, became 4 regions, then post-Civil War we became 12 states, then 19 states, then on and on until we became 30 states, and then now 36 states. So if we continue to balkanize, it'll get to a point where every family will become one state if we are not careful. But when this issue of identity politics came up at the national conference that you were a part of, what were the considerations and what were the proposed solutions? What are the contentions and what are the proposed solutions?
Well, let me give you the answer by merging it with that of religious differences. Because we had a committee with 2 chairmen, Sheikh Lebu from Niger State and the Bishop of Ekiti Diocese, the Catholic Bishop of Ekiti Diocese. Those 2 were not even expected to produce a report because the membership was 6 Muslims, 6 Christians. But they did. And when they presented their reports, everybody gave them a standing ovation. Sheikh Lebu said, when you die, God is not going to ask you, Igbo, come here, Yoruba, come here, Christian, come here, Muslim, come here. No. You are going to be judged according to how you treated your neighbors, how you live their life. Now, this same committee made some startling suggestions. Set up an interreligious interfaith or intertribal committee, also with balanced membership. And when that happens, once there is any sign of this kind of discourage, we take it to them that they must solve it. And we all accepted it. But straight on to the ravaging effects of tribalism. I say ravaging effect because once you are in it, you are consumed in it. Let me put it this way. Some places in Lagos, you see some houses where they say, house to let, flat to let, Igbo not wanted, and somebody will write it boldly. He forgets that the day, or house are not wanted. He forgets that the day an accident may occur, the man who will run to his head may not be a Yoruba person. Maybe one of those people he has always hated. Now, Any enlightened person who comes to leadership, you notice it. I'll just give you one example. Fashola went to the University of Benin where he read law. His roommates were Igbo. I wouldn't name them. They know themselves. And he continued to relate with them. When he became governor, he inherited Ben Akabeze, the commissioner, from Ashwaji. And Ashwaji said, I want the best. What did Fashola say when he came to see us in Akikin? He said, look, this man is the best brain possible. What if Fashola had said, oh, Omo Igbo, why should I take an Igbo man? No, Ben is now, by his performance, he's now at the federal level. And before he was appointed, the person who was there because of his tribe. And he messed up the first year of Buhari's budget. And as soon as Ben came in, because of his ability, he is now being looked at as a guru. Now extrapolate it to our individual lives. In many offices, private offices, we look for the best brands. But when we're in power, what do? I must get somebody in the Senate to do. I must get a special assistant who's my cousin, a PA who is my son, a DC who is my son, a that who is my son. What efficiency are you planning for? At the national level and at the national conference, issue of tribe always reared, continue to rear its head. And what did we do? We put our feet down. In this country, we must think as well. And straight back to states, creation and so on. Most of us down south actually think there is only one or two tribes in the north, and that is not so. A state like Bauchi, where the governor is talking about the supremacy or the uniqueness of the Fulani man carrying a gun as of right, carrying AK-47 as of right. Bauchi has over 50 tribes. Adamawa has about 100. And each of them wanted an identity at the conference. I still have a full load of all the letters they now sent him. What were they looking for? Respect. If you give them respect, they will not demand for states. If you give them a level playing ground, they will not demand for states. If you make this equal, things will work for everybody. And what is the problem in Lagos? You have the worries. The worries are always complaining because they are heavily marginalized. The day we have a governor who will say, look, our worries were there before everybody. We must be central part of this governance. Things will change. Now, look at what you call tribalism in some states may actually be seeking equality. Look at Benue State. Can the Idoma man never be governor? Look at the Kanuri in Borno. They're always dominating that state. They don't want the Biu people or any other person to be a governor. Some states have been able to find equality and to neutralize that complaint, but others have not. So the day we start moving, yes.
Let me just put this to you because I know that we'll probably begin to wind down shortly on this conversation. How do we begin to tackle this? I remember, you would probably want to reference it as well, that the United States of United States of America, beg your pardon, also had that challenge at some point. They recognized that there are many identity nationalities in their country as well. So they began to give it recognition, consequently, becoming, informing the kind of system that they have now, such that every state seems to be independent on its own, while the center also has its own. But they haven't also been, the issues are still there, but it would seem like there's a bit of a stability as far as that nation is concerned. But then you may want to answer that question when we come from this break as to how do we begin to address the identity problems to bring everyone in while retaining our uniqueness. All right, thanks for staying with us. Mr. Mabogunje, there are a good number of countries all over the world that have, of course, I don't think there's any country of the world that has just one tribe or one ethnic group or nationality. But then there are those who are able to manage them well enough to bring everybody together, give a sense of recognition, sense of identity, while all walking towards one. But then we also have countries that are still struggling with that identity. How is that playing out? But before we take that, we understand that there are some happenings at the Lekki toll gate where that notice was put out in the course of the week that there is going to be some occupying of the Lekki toll gate. Let's take a look at what's happening right there now. Chris Illems, our correspondent, is right there now. So, Chris, do tell us, so far, what is happening? We hear rumors that there have been some arrests made. What's going on?
Ayo, good morning. Basically, this place is empty, not as much as people would have expected. Coming to VI this morning, it's a bit very, very somber. The mood is somber. Not too many vehicles on the road. I'm sure a lot of people decided to stay at home because they didn't want to be caught up in the challenges that a protest could throw up. But right now, at the Lekki toll gate, the center, the theater of the NSAS protest, it is basically occupied by pressmen. Then, of course, a lot of policemen all around here. And a few arrests have actually been made. And a while ago, some of them were transferred to another police van and they've been taken away. We don't really know where they've been taken to. But not too many people came out this morning. And if the police saw anyone walking aimlessly, they go after the person and, of course, arrest such persons. So right now, they don't want to see anybody around here. They don't want to see any protester because once they see you, they definitely would arrest you. So whether you are part of the Occupy Lekki toll gate protest or Defend Lagos toll gate protest group, you could be arrested if the police saw you around. So that's basically it right now. So we're just here waiting. It's the pressmen occupying this place.
Well, it would seem like the pressmen are the ones right now making good what is supposed to happen there. But did you, by any chance, notice officials of LCC, the company that is said to have been given the power, right, by the Lagos Judicial Panel to occupy, to take back possession of their property so that they can access whatever it is that they need to? Do you see any operative working around, just trying to take notes or anything? Any operative of the LCC on duty?
If you look behind me, you see one of their vehicles there. It's like an enforcement vehicle. They call it LCC enforcement unit. That is where they actually, once you are caught as a protester, they throw you into, it's like a mobile prison. It belongs to them. So, yeah, we have a few of them, a few of the officials around here. And though they're not working, but they're here just watching. I think people are trying to observe to see what eventually happens today. That is the situation of things right now. It's quite calm. Nothing much happening at the moment.
Well, so far it would seem like the security operatives themselves are, of course, doing their job. What's the mood of the security operatives themselves? Any high-handedness? You know, what's the general mood of the activities of the police operatives and the security operatives who are supposed to ensure what the Commissioner of Police in Lagos has said?
Okay. I got a bit distracted. They are chasing one of the protesters who came around here. He's running away. The mood here is that
Mind, Chris, if you can show us.
If my cameraman can actually
yes, please
capture.
Go ahead.
Okay, he can't really do that.
Okay.
He can't capture that right now. The mood here is if they see you, you are in for it. They are ready to clamp down on anybody that is seen as a protester. And that is the case. So if you come in around, because the federal government has already said that they will deal decisively with anyone that will try to foment trouble. And I think that's the posture of the police or the security operatives around here. They're actually working hand in hand with officials of the LCC here.
Thank you, Chris. I'll allow you to go take that shot that we are missing right now. Hopefully, we'll be able to get more from you after this moment. Clearly, you can see right behind our man, Chris Illems, right there, that vehicles are moving in and out of the toll gate. And as the Commissioner for Information in Lagos told us yesterday, the toll gate was never shut down. It's just the commercial activity of collecting tolls from people that was suspended in the aftermath of the protests and, of course, the destruction of that property. But let's get back into our conversation. So, Mr. Mabogunje, I hope you understand the question, the issue I raised the other time. Many nations of the world have more than 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, even 50 unique ethnic identities. Some have been able to work out modalities for living together, working together as a united nation. Some are having a difficult time doing that, and a good number of them we have where they are, there is civil unrest all over the place, and then there are those who are managing these things well. As a nation, how would you say we are faring in these diverse identities under one nation? And what are the risks? What do we need to do to get it right?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. I think we must accept that identity politics is a reality and it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. So long as I remain a Yoruba man, Chief remains an Igbo man, Alhaji Tanko remains an Hausa man. So long as we are unique nations, there will always be identity politics. But identity politics in itself is not a negative thing. Neither is it a positive thing, it's a neutral thing. After all, we all enjoy when we watch the cultural displays, dances. It's part of the beauty of Nigeria that different groups can come together and allow their strengths and diversity to show up. But if it is not well managed, it can lead to a crisis. And so the management of that diversity is the problem we have today, not the identity politics. A government comes in and must always be conscious that you are dealing with various nationalities. That is not, we can't have a unified people in Nigeria because we are different. So any government that comes in must be extremely sensitive to the diverse nature of the country and put in place structures and policies that recognize the diversity. When that is done, then the strengths will come together and you will have a beautiful country. Because every human being there has the equal rights, equal recognition. There's no discrimination. The minute you start to make a section of the country or whatever begin to feel discriminated against or not having the same right any other person, that is when the country, there will always be the fault line of national identity. But if everything is working harmoniously, if the economy is thriving, those fault lines, the tension that comes from it will be minimized. But once there's a problem, I mean, like even in the US, you could see that because of the leadership of Donald Trump, the fault lines that have always been in the US reared up their ugly head and the country went into a kind of crisis. So a lot depends on how the leadership handles the issue of diversity. You can't ignore it. You can't force people to behave the way you want them to. So you must recognize that diversity, put in place policies and structures. And I keep saying structure because I'm taking it out of the word of restructuring. Because right now, Nigeria is not working. Each time there's a problem, the identity politics becomes a negative tool. And today that we have social media and so many other means of communication not controlled by the government of the day, certainly a lot of information that the government can't control will be out there. So I just think the government needs to be particularly sensitive to the issue of diversity and put in place structures that allow the strength of that diversity to be amplified and not the weakness. Because there's a weakness to it, there's a strength to it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mambogunje. Dr. Tanko, I referenced the national anthem, the first national anthem the other time. It would seem like the first national anthem we had, our own dear native land, though tribes and tongue may differ, in brotherhood which stands, recognizes the different nationalities. But then look at the second national anthem. The only reference that I can adduce in all of that is the second to the last line of the first stanza, which is one nation bound in freedom, peace, and unity. I've scanned in my head the entire second national anthem, and that's about the only reference to it. Is that in any way an indication that we want to pretend like the different identities are not there, as opposed to giving it the recognition it deserves and putting in the structures necessary, as Mr. Mambogunje has suggested, if you agree with him, in order for us to have the kind of peace, the kind of freedom, peace, and unity that we propose in the national anthem?
Those words were beautifully coined. And then I agree with you totally. At a point in time, there was no separation among us. You all agree that you find favor, you enjoy the company of a Yoruba man. A Yoruba man or a Hausa man also find favor and enjoy the company of an Igbo man. As we speak, some of the Igbo people who are living in our villages and who are selling pharmaceutical drugs and all, who we used to know as chemists, we don't see any other person at that time like a physician or a pharmaceutical company than an Igbo man. We see him as a doctor. You know, so that particular unity and love was existing among all of us, except for now when we polarize the system because of the issues that we've already raised. Then what do we do about it as Ranger? There must be leadership by example. And those particular words that you mentioned must be led by our leaders and show example. Where you, as a president, when you are going to take your ADC, you don't take an ADC because you are a Yoruba man, you take an ADC as a Yoruba man. You take maybe an Igbo man and a Hausa man as your ADC to show that there's a unity in diversity. When you want to appoint commissioners, you appoint commissioners of people who are living within your domain. If it's a state, you have a conglomerate of Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa men who have capacity to change the dynasty of that particular state. And so it must be replicated at the national.
Okay.
That is the way in which you can show leadership by example. Not by way of you appointing people who are within your
Dr.
own
Tanko,
cocoon.
You have already identified the national there. I mean, let's end it at that point. I remember, Chief Wazirike, the governor of Bauchi State referenced the fact that there are different people of different nationalities in different states of Nigeria, and they're doing, their level best in the communities and domains where they have resided over the years. About one representation, one institution, if we're talking about institutions here, that represents our nationhood, about our unique identities under one roof, is the National Assembly, as well as the Nigerian Governors Forum. Do you see any role for these two institutions along the line of our laws, our politics, and other institutions that can foster this unity in diversity?
Well, you know, a governor essentially represents his people. If Governor Anthem goes to the National Nigerian Governors Forum, he is there as a chief man who is governing Benue State. The governor of Bauchi is also the same Fulani man governing Bauchi State. In Bauchi, there is more diversity than in Benue State. But the ability to manage all those ones will depend on their skill. The governor of Bauchi can intimidate the middle silence. He can coerce a bit of silence, but he can also work with them in such a way that there is harmony. There is silence always in the grave, but that was the silence of the graveyard. But in reality, the man in Benue has less challenges than the man in Bauchi. But again,
if we can just very, very quickly, my apologies, if we can very quickly, because we're running out of time, to the National Assembly, is there a role for the National Assembly in fostering this unity in diversity? They are all diverse anyway.
Everybody's there. Okay. No, everybody's there. No. National Assembly should be in the forefront in making sure that tribalism schemacies that actually go, which is why they have 6 zones in this country, and the principal officers must come from the 6 zones, which is why we always cry when they don't want to respect the views of other people and say, well, we're in the majority, therefore minority shut up. I would say, no. Minority will have its say, majority will have its way, but you cannot deny them that.
Okay.
We are practicing democracy. Even the man with 1 vote is important.
All right. So, but we have to thank you. My apologies, Chief Wazirike. We have completely run out of time, but this has been a beginning of conversations along the same line. I have to thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the conversation. Chief Godi Wazirike is a lawyer, former president of an Igbo think tank, Akaikenga, as well as a former member of the National Conference. Mr. Shiomabo Gunjai is a security engineer, as well as Dr. Yunus Tanko, who is spokesperson for National Consultative Forum. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and thoughts. Another issue beckons in a moment after this break. Do stay with us.